Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we got our... where is it? I know it's in here somewhere. The mining ring station packed up and ready to go. We need to lift this monstrosity now and get it properly assembled in orbit. So who all do we want in this? Honestly, the only person that we really need in this is Bill Kerman right now. So we'll have Bill in here, and this does have a hatch on it, so we'll be fine on that front. And then we're going to need to lift this thing. And here's the thing. Well, I was going to say that we're going to need to be a little bit concerned about having a stage here, but we're actually not necessarily. We could, like, move that stage up here theoretically. I'm not sure if Bill's going to be able to do that by himself. But we could also just jettison the stage if we needed to. That isn't a real problem. So we could go for like a 32 here, like this. And then this would be a... keep in mind, this is mostly empty space in here. This would be a terrier, or not a terrier. This would be a poodle, like this. My question is, just how heavy is this really? I don't know, and we're going to find that out. That's going to be very interesting. So we're going to put in a TD25 here. And I'm also interested in seeing if I put in at the bottom here any strut connectors. I believe I did. Yes, those are strut connectors in there. Okay, so that'll be good. We want to put in at least a couple of the big orange tanks. Hypothetically, how much thrust to weight would this be if we had a mainsail on this? I have no idea what to expect here. 0.98, that's actually not bad. Like I said, most of this is empty weight. These modular girder segments don't weigh much at all. So that's good to know. Okay, so at this point, we are going to grab ourselves a pair of radial decouplers on here. And we're going to put in some big ol' SRBs, as we have been. And the question is, if we were to go for, say, some Clydesdales here, that's probably overkill, in all honesty. 1.39? 1.72. Actually, I'm not going to call that overkill. We're going to move these down to be about here. We could probably get away with a little bit more fuel, just because of the size here and the thrust to weight. So like a 32 tank. Something kind of like that. 1.65. Yeah, that's pretty good. So we could get away with that. And then for the aerodynamics, we would need like that's way too big of a nose cone. We would need somebody kind of like that. And then we would strut these together for sure. Down over here. Okay. So obviously this station is very incomplete, right? This is only going to be the ring portion that we're going to be sending up and assembling. I believe we have everything that we need, but we can always send up another flight if we need it. We do have docking ports in here, so that'll be okay. Cool. This is going to be real interesting, getting this thing set up. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to pull this off yet, but let's find out, shall we? Let's save and launch this thing. It's going to be real interesting trying to steer it. I just thought of that. We may have to revert this. What do we have inside of the fairing for any sort of like reaction wheel? I think our reaction wheels are mostly packed up right now. Let's revert this back. And maybe it's running reasonably smoothly. For a second there, I thought it was lagging something horribly. But it didn't immediately explode. That's a good sign. Let's go ahead and revert this back to the vehicle assembly here, though, just because I want to check to see, do we have a good reaction wheel on this thing? Yes, we do. Okay. That's all I wanted to know. So let's get this going. Oh, we don't have aerodynamic fins. We should probably have some fin steering. Yeah, we definitely should with how top heavy I believe this thing will be. That said, a lot of the weight is going to be more towards the bottom of the fairing. But yes, we should definitely revert this back again. and we should absolutely put on some tail fins. So let's look at our center of mass. Not that bad, honestly. Like I said, a lot of these parts are really light, so that's not that big of a deal. But we absolutely do want to get some, not aeroplane tail fins necessarily, but just regular old tail fins, I think. So those are winglets. I'm apparently blind. I'm probably looking right at it. Let's just search. Tail fin. Okay. These bad boys. We'll have 4 of those, and we need our aerodynamic overlay. And we'll put them right about here. Not there, but there. That should do. Okay. Now we'll launch this thing and see about starting to get it assembled. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the whole assembly process on camera. That sounds like that might be really, really tedious. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. We'll go for this episode and work on assembling it. I might assemble it the rest of the way off camera. Man, that fairing looks ridiculous. I gotta say, this is one of the dumbest looking rockets I've ever made. And it's great. Hopefully things don't blow up when we lift off the pad. Let's see how it goes. I just want to double check our staging here. So we fire these 3 engines all first, our SRBs pop off, and then our maneuvering stage, which we don't have much in, but we in theory don't need much in. Our fairing and that decoupler, and that's our engine plate, which we don't want to fire. Okay, sounds good. Off we go. Wow. Okay. This is going to be real spicy. We're just going to try to go up here. Look how wiggly this thing is. We're not going to care too much about our inclination. We're just going to try to go up. We can fix our inclination later. Okay. I should have considered that it would be this wiggly. That is definitely something that I should have done. We're drifting off pretty hard here. Okay. We can try to fix it later. For now, we've got an apoapsis height of 32 kilometers. Our SRBs are going to pop off in about 30 seconds. Things seem to be stabilizing a bit for us, but I'm not going to try to steer this thing. I think that that is an exercise in futility. We're just going to try to punch up through the atmosphere up to, I think we're going to aim for like 150. Like that. Okay. SRBs are going to pop off shortly. Okay. There we go. So we're going to go on to stability assist here. We're going to ditch our fairing, which will help. I'm not going to say that it will fix the problem, because I do not believe that it will. Look at that inclination. Okay. Yep, that was definitely awkward, no doubt about that. We will see about getting this thing into orbit, and we can always fix the actual inclination a little bit later on. That was not an efficient launch by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. I'm not shocked by that, though. We're going to go ahead and extend our solar panels, and we're trying to make our way around to the maneuver node here. You can see just how wiggly we are right at this joint. I'm not hugely shocked by that, but this will be okay. We will try to fix our inclination later, but that's going to be interesting. Okay. Now that we're in space, things will get a lot easier for us. Yes, that apoapsis height is quite high, but that's okay as well. We can always change that a little bit later on. Okay. We're almost in position here. Let's warp. And the question is, how is this aim going to be like when we throttle up? And that's going to be real interesting too. So we've got 10 seconds left here. And let's try this burn. Yeah, we're going to have some pretty big wiggling going on here. Man, that needs to be strutted together in future, for sure. That's very spicy. Incredibly spicy. Not rigid at all. Okay. Well, we know that's where the joint problem is. And overall, this is quasi-okay. Emphasis on the quasi. Things will get a lot better once this stage is burned out in 40 seconds. There's no way I'm going to physics warp this. For the record. No way at all. Well, this is certainly not the most efficient launch we've ever had. I can tell you that right now. We've got 500 meters per second left to get into orbit here properly. That would be a circularized orbit. We need less to get into just an orbit. Okay. Things should be a little bit more controllable now. Yes, this looks a lot better in terms of controllability. So that's great. Another 200 meters per second. I'm just going to target an orbit, I think. We can fix the orbit a little bit later on. Now we could always bring up additional engines and whatnot here. This was always going to be the most awkward portion to launch. And I think overall this is good. 130 more meters per second here. We're now in orbital mode. Okay, that is an orbit. And for now, that's all we're going to be worried about. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to target this ComSat because I want to try to change our inclination here. Now, that's a pretty major inclination difference. There's no doubt about that. But at this ascending node here, we can come on over and attempt to change this a bit. So this will need to be anti-normal. And how much delta V would this take to smooth this out? More than we've got. Okay. And of course, we'd want to toss some retrograde in there too. So it would end up being something approximately like that. I mean, maybe we call this the orbit that we were targeting and just pretend like this is correct. It's a possibility. I don't think it's a good possibility. So I want to grab the ComSat here and detarget it. There we go. At least for now. The question is, do we start building this before or after we get our orbit fixed? I mean, obviously, we're going to need a docking port on this to refuel this fuel tank. So we could have Bill EVA here. And then Bill would look to grab this docking port, in theory. Can he put that into his inventory? We'll find out. We'll pin this open. I'm not sure if he can. No, that's way too big. Okay, so what we're going to do instead is we're going to enter build mode here. And that is done with this. Grab this out of here, and we can just attach it right there like that. So now we can bring in another flight to refuel, but we may want to have this attached down here instead. So what we're going to do is we're going to let go, and we're going to head on over this direction. And we'll bring this on with. And hope that we don't drift too far away. Okay. And we'll just put it there for now. Cool. So that'll do, and then we'll have Bill head back in. Now, Bill's going to have a lot of spacewalks to get this done. There's no doubt about that. We're going to bring him back for now. There you go, Bill. Hop on in. Okay, so we can now dock over here if we want to bring in additional fuel. And I think another fuel run for this thing is going to be pretty necessary. I'd like to get us in our proper orbit before we start our construction. And what do we want that proper orbit to be? That's something to think about as well. I think at this ascending node, let's go ahead and burn and bring this out. I do think we want maybe a little bit more apoapsis room here. Have this be at maybe like 1,000,000 kilometers. So this would end up being, you know, something kind of like this. But for now, we're not going to do any of the retrograde. We're just going to burn pure anti-normal once we get here. And we're going to burn out everything in this tank. And then we'll bring up a refueling flight to refuel this and get us into our proper orbit. In future, I would definitely solidify this joint, but I mean, it ended up working, and we're not planning on ever launching this rocket again. So there is some of that, to be sure. Let's get ready for this, and let's warp on over. Cool. So we are in position for this right now. We will lock to the maneuver node. And let's physics warp a bit. There we go. And let's warp on towards this burn. Okay. In space near the Badlands. Okay, we're not going to grab that right now. And let's burn out all of our fuel here. So this will get us into not quite the orbit we were looking for, but it's closer. And then we're going to need to bring up some fuel, which is completely fine. We'll bring up a refueling flight and then return that back to Kerbal after we've refueled this. Because I don't want to leave this dock here while we're doing maneuvers, so that'll be fine. This burn will be fairly lengthy. We should be able to get away with physics warping it, I think. No. We actually can't get away with physics warping it. That's sad. We drift off when we're physics warped. I really wasn't intending this to be maneuvered too much at this point, but it's fine. We're just going to target an equatorial 1,000,000 kilometer orbit. But it's going to be a little janky to get the refueling mission here. That's for sure. So what are we going to do to bring that refueling mission? I mean, it won't be that complicated, I don't think. It should be pretty simple, straightforward. All we got to do is bring some fuel up and fuel up this tank here. This should be enough fuel to get us into the orbit that we want. We're honestly most of the way there with this burn, so it should be completely fine. And honestly, this will likely get jettisoned later on and be replaced with some form of a different propulsion structure, but not exactly in this position, I would guess. Okay, so this burn is going to be continuing for about another minute here. Can we maybe get away with a 2x physics warp? It may just be 4x physics warps that were causing us difficulties. Yeah, this seems to be fine. So that is great. This burn will be done in 20 seconds. And after that, we'll bring up a refueling mission. Okay. And there's the burn done. Let's head back to the Space Center and let's grab ourselves some fuel. So we're going to want like a big orange tank that doesn't draw fuel from it, ideally. Something along those lines. I mean, we can only fit a 3200. or rather a T-32 in that, right? So actually, we only need a T-32 worth. So we're going to grab ourselves a bit of a fuel, or rather a mining ring refueler. We're going to create a new craft here. Mining ring refueler. We might launch this multiple times, we'll see. But for now, I think we're going to go with like a medium remote guidance unit. On top of that, we're going to put a Clampetron docking port. So just a regular size docking port. Then we're going to put in perhaps a... well, we know that we need a T-32, right? So a Rockamax, or rather an X-232. A Rockamax X-232 here. And then ideally, we don't want to pull out of that. We could have this be a Jumbo 64, something like this, and then have this be our maneuvering stage, and we burn like half of it. That's a possibility. We want to have a lot of fuel left over when we get there, but ideally not too much fuel. So then we would put in a decoupler here. This is going to be a pretty simple rocket, right? I'm not too concerned about that. I do like the orange tanks, so we'll have it be a big orange tank and then like dual big orange tanks here. And how would a mainsail do lifting that? 1.21. So we do need SRBs if we want to lift this. I mean, we could do it, but if we want to lift this reasonably efficiently. So we wouldn't need that big of SRBs, in all honesty. We would bring in... I mean, we could even liquid fuel, but I think this is fine. I think we would bring in something like... Clydesdales are way too big. Pollexes, perhaps? Even that's probably too much. 1.72, that's not too bad. I guess that'll do. I'd like to thrust limit these, though. Down to around 80% thrust, I feel like. 1.5? Okay, maybe like 90% thrust. 1.61. That'll do. Okay, so some aerodynamics on those. There we go. And then we will strut that together. Like so. We shouldn't have a hugely weak joint here, but just to be on the safe side, we're going to strut this together. There we go. And then as far as this goes, we could put a fairing on that, or we could just try to limit our speed through the atmosphere by bringing this down to like 75% thrust. 1.44 thrust to weight? Maybe. Maybe like 85. 1.55. It's going to be a little slower. I think it'll be okay. In theory. Are we going to need tail fins on this? Probably not, is my guess, but we'll do it anyway, just to be on the safe side. So tail fin would be this guy. And we would place those right about here. Okay. So let's get that launched. We know we're in an awkward inclination, but we can just launch into a orbital, into an equatorial circular orbit that's a fairly low one, and we should be able to get a pretty easy encounter that way. We should have more than enough fuel to do stuff here, so I'm not too concerned about the fuel. The only thing I'm concerned about is burning off some of this stuff. We'll see how it goes. Throttle up, and off we go. We may need to throttle down. Actually, I'm going to throttle this down to like 2/3 thrust. Yeah. I just want our thrust to weight to be a bit lower through this lower portion of the atmosphere here. Okay, we're going to head on over equatorially. Cool. And we'll just park here for the time being. Sounds good. Lock to prograde. We're a little bit north on our heading here, but that's actually good. We know that we launched into like a 135 degree inclination previously rather than a 90 degree, so we need to go somewhat this way anyway. So that's actually reasonably fine. If we see too much heating effects here, I will further drop our thrust. on our mainsail. But so far it looks reasonable. Okay. 15 more seconds of burn in our SRBs. We're going to have to throttle back up with our mainsail when our SRBs drop off, of course. We're punching up nicely through the atmosphere here. Throttling back up now. And off goes our SRBs. Okay. We may need to throttle down here. I'm keeping an eye out for any heating effects up here. It's definitely spicy in terms of the heat. But the atmosphere is getting thinner all the time. And we'll see. Our apoapsis height is still pretty low right now, which I don't love. Okay, we're starting to see a heat gauge here. I'm going to throttle it down. Back to 2/3 thrust. That should buy us more time. We've still got about 30 seconds of burn left in this first stage. 50 kilometer apoapsis at this time. $60 kilometer. We're going to target about 80 here, I think. 70 and 80. Okay. We'll stop increasing thrust at this time, and at the apoapsis here, we will go ahead and circularize. We don't really care too much about our inclination right now, but there we go. We'll head over to the maneuver nodes once we drop off this plasma a bit. We're almost to 50 kilometers, so once we hit 50 kilometers in altitude, we'll head over to the maneuver node, I think. Yeah, that should be fine. 50 kilometers will be the time for that. And we've got a little bit left in the tank, which is actually enough to get us into orbit, hilariously. Okay, let's head over to the maneuver node. We're going to have a very hard time turning this thing, and I just realized we don't have any power flow. We're going to have to be pretty quick here. Okay. Yeah, that's a problem. I should have put power on this thing. We may have to abort this flight. I completely forgot power. That is my own fault entirely. If we run out of power, yeah, that's my own fault. If we run out of power, I will get us back to this position with some power in the intervening time between episodes, I think. Yeah, you can definitely see our electric charge is a problem. We do have an alternator on these engines, so I think we'll be okay. Let's just run our engine a tiny amount here. That is mostly just to get us turning and to boost up our electric charge a bit. Okay. There we go. I think we can get there with our electric charge. We're going to need to hit space here, which will be soon. Throttling up a tiny bit just to hold us here, and to boost our electric charge a tiny amount. Okay, so we're going to start this burn in about 2 minutes, and we're going to need to turn our reaction wheels off here fairly soon, I think, or at least go into hibernation. Okay, hibernation on, and we can warp. Cool. And this is going to be starting a burn shortly-ish. Okay. Hibernation off. And starting our burn. Cool. Our electric charge is now full. And let's get that last little bit of the burn here. This is actually good enough. Okay, hibernation back on. And SAS off. So we're not draining electric charge. And at this point, we're going to need to find ourselves an encounter, but that will be a mission for next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including Casserole, Sigma162, JJ Gamer, Spartan News, Rose Valentine, Nick Smarty, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, click the join button down below the video. And as always, I will see you all next time.